Hey, it's Yay for Yarn, and today I'm going to show you how to crochet a knit-look hat for beginners. So this is a super simple way to make a hat, and not only are we going to make the easiest kind of hat that you can possibly make, but we're also going to make it with a knit-look stitch. So it's crochet, but it does very much resemble knitting. So we're going to be making this hat out of a rectangle. We're going to make a rectangle of this knit-look stitch. It's kind of like a ribbing stitch. And then we're just going to sew it together to make it into a hat. But this is super simple, very beginner friendly. If you can make a rectangle out of going back and forth in half double crochet, you can make this hat. So the first thing you're going to need for this pattern is the written pattern itself. You can find that on my blog by clicking the link in the description box below. Or if you would like, you can also purchase a large print, ad-free, printable PDF version of the pattern in my Ravelry store. So here's the yarn I'm using. This is Knit Picks Brava Bulky, and the colorway is called Cream. And this is a number 5 bulky weight yarn. So you can substitute another brand or another line of yarn as long as it says number 5 bulky weight. And this one is acrylic, nice and soft and squishy, and I like that because it is machine washable. But you just want to make sure that, first of all, it's number 5 bulky weight, and you also want to make sure that it has enough yards in it, in the skein that you have, to be at least as much as what is listed in the pattern that you'll need for the size you want to make. So this pattern comes in 10 sizes, from size preemie to an adult large. And ideally you would want to measure the wearer's head to select the size that you want to make. But if you can't measure the wearer's head, then the sizes are marked, according to the approximate age or size of the person wearing them. So there's a preemie size, a 0 to 6 months, 6 to 12 months, 12 to 18 months, a child small, a child medium, a child large, an adult small, adult medium, and adult large. So for this bulky weight yarn, this is a good thing that we're using bulky weight yarn because that will help it go faster. You'll also need a size K, US size K, or 6.5 millimeter crochet hook. You're going to need some scissors, a measuring tape, a yarn needle or a blunt tapestry needle. I highly recommend using a metal blunt tapestry needle over a plastic yarn needle because I don't really like plastic yarn needles very well. They tend to break and get bent, and metal ones just hold up a lot longer, and they are a lot easier to work with, in my opinion. And if you want, you will also need a pom pom maker. Now you can make a pom pom without this type of pom pom maker. You can use 2 pieces of cardboard and do it that way, or whatever method that you want to use to make your pom pom. But I'm using this Clover Pom Pom Maker. This is I think the extra large or the jumbo size, and this one makes a 3 3/8 inch approximately in diameter pom pom. Now you just want to note that the yardage given in the pattern, and the pattern does tell you this, is for the hat itself, and then there's an estimated approximate yardage for the pom-pom, because the exact amount that the pom-pom will use up is going to depend entirely on, first of all, the size of your pom-pom maker, and also how thickly you wrap the yarn around the pom-pom maker. So the yardage is given for the hat itself first, and then there's an estimated approximate yardage given for the pom-pom separately, because this is a variable amount of yarn for the pom-pom. Alright, so now we're going to start making the hat itself. This is made from a rectangle, as I said earlier, and we're kind of working a rectangle out of half double crochet, only we're going to just do the half double crochets a little bit differently to give it that knit look. So I'm going to start out by making a slip knot, like so, and then I'm going to chain 2. So what we're going to do is we're going to skip this first chain. We're going to yarn over and insert the hook into that second chain from the hook, like so. It's just like a regular half double crochet up to this point. We're going to yarn over and pull up a loop. So now we have 3 loops on the hook. Now we're going to yarn over, and instead of working it like a regular half double crochet and pulling through all the loops on the hook, we're just going to yarn over and pull through 1 loop. That creates the foundation chain. Then we're going to yarn over and pull through all 3. So for all of the following foundation half double crochets, we're going to do it the same way again, but we're going to yarn over and insert into the base of the previous foundation half double crochet. So here's the half double crochet part, and here's the foundation part, and there will be 2 strands of yarn across that bottom edge. So we've inserted into that. It looks a lot like a regular crocheted stitch when you work into it. We're going to yarn over and pull up 1 loop. Then we have 3 loops on our hook. We're going to yarn over and pull through 1 loop. Then we're going to yarn over and pull through all 3 remaining loops. So one more time, we're going to yarn over, turn to that foundation edge, and insert into the base of the previous stitch. There should be 2 strands across the top of your hook. That looks like a regular crochet stitch that you would insert into normally. We're going to yarn over and pull up a loop. We now have 3 loops on the hook. We're going to yarn over and pull through 1 loop. Then we're going to yarn over and pull through all 3 loops. So I'm going to continue working the foundation half double crochet until I have the number specified in the pattern for the size that I'm making, and I am making the adult small. Alright, so that was my last foundation half double crochet. Here is my first row, and you're always going to want to make sure to count the stitches in your row to make sure you still have the correct number of stitches for the row that you've just worked. So you just want to note that this chain 2 at the beginning right here, that does not count as a stitch. So I'm only counting these half double crochet stitches, and I have the correct number of stitches for this row. So now we're going to work row 2, and to do this we're going to chain 2 and turn. Now we're not going to count that chain 2 as a stitch. So what we're going to do is we're going to work a ribbed half double crochet across this row. And a ribbed half double crochet is pretty simple. It is just like a regular half double crochet, but instead of inserting the hook into the tops of the stitches like this, like we normally would, we're going to come down here and notice that there's this little horizontal strand of yarn right here that runs across the side of the stitches that's facing you, and it kind of runs almost parallel to the strands of yarn that go across the top of the stitch. So instead of going into this hole right here and under those top 2 strands of the stitch below, we're going to insert into this little horizontal strand that is facing us as the front of the previous row. So what we're going to do is yarn over just like a regular half double crochet, insert into that horizontal strand. We're going to yarn over and pull up a loop, and we're going to yarn over and pull through all 3 loops on the hook. So it's just like a regular half double crochet. All that changes is where we work it. So I'm going to do that again. Instead of inserting into the top of the stitch where those 2 strands run across the top of your hook, we're going to insert into this horizontal strand on the front of the stitch below, and yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through all 3. So one more time, we're going to yarn over, and instead of inserting into the top of the stitch, we're going to come down here and find this little horizontal strand that runs parallel, almost parallel to the top of the stitch. Yarn over, pull up a loop, and yarn over, pull through all 3. So I am going to continue working that ribbed half double crochet in every stitch across. So that was the last stitch. I'm not going to work into that chain 2 from the previous row because we're not counting that as a stitch. And that is the end of row 2. You're going to want to make sure that you count your stitches just to check and make sure that you still have the correct number of stitches for the row 2 that we just did. We're not counting this chain 2 at the beginning of the row. And what we're going to be doing is we're just going to keep repeating that row 2 until we have the total number of rows that the pattern calls for the size that you're making. So if we turn this over, you can see that we have now created, that ribbed half double crochet has created a ridge of what looks like, if you turn it this way, the knit stitches in a knitted fabric. So this is going to give us a knit look without actually having to knit it. It's going to be crocheted all the way through, but it will still very closely resemble knitted ribbing. So I'm just going to continue repeating row 2 until I have the correct number of rows for the size that I'm making, and then I will show you what my piece looks like. Alright, so I have finished my entire rectangle, and as you can see, that's all it is just a rectangle. So I am going to go ahead and cut the yarn and tie off. And I've left a pretty decent tail. It's about a yard or close to it. And this is just a rectangle. So you're just going to need to crochet up to the total number of rows that are required in the pattern for the size that you're making. So I have my long tail here, and I am going to thread it onto my yarn needle. I like a bent tipped one, but if you don't have a bent tipped one, you can use whatever kind you prefer. So what I'm going to do is take the 2 short edges on either side and bring them together. And what we're going to do is kind of sew the seam up. So I'm going to bring mine together so that on the outside, the kind of ribbed columns are going up, where the V shapes are going up like this. And I'm going to show you how to stitch this up. So what we're going to do is we're going to stitch this together in a way that makes it look invisible and makes the seam look just like one of these columns of ribbing. So here is my yarn tail from where I started, and what we're going to do is first I'm going to take a stitch across that gap to join just the very corners of the hat together. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this side, which is the last row that I just did, and I'm going to make this top edge right here, which is the tops of the stitches from the last row, make the next ribbing column. So you'll also notice that the foundation edge, where we did that foundation half double crochet, that edge is very similar in look and feel to the top of a regular row of stitches. So that will make it a lot easier to sew these 2 edges together, because this is just like inserting into the top of a regular crochet stitch, even though this is the foundation edge. So what I'm going to do is I am going to insert my needle through this first stitch on the foundation edge, pointing my needle towards the other edge. Then I'm going to insert it into the first stitch on the top edge, and then bring it down back through the next stitch on the top edge, pointing back this way towards me. And that will be my first stitch. So now I'm going to come back over here. I'm going to take another stitch through the next foundation edge stitch. Then on the top edge, I'm going to come back and insert into this same stitch that my yarn is coming out of from the previous stitch from the seaming. So this was the stitch that I came out of the last time. I'm going to go back through it, pointing away from me, and come through the next one coming towards me. And that's another stitch. So now I'm going to come over here again to the foundation edge, and insert my needle into the next stitch pointing away from me. Then on the top edge, I'm going to insert my needle into the same stitch that the yarn is coming from before, and then back towards me through the next stitch and pull it through. And if we pull this tight, you'll be able to see that this is going to leave the illusion that, first of all, there's no seam, and secondly, that the seam right here is actually a column of ribbing, because it's going to look just like the rest of the columns of ribbing. So again, I'm going to come down here to the foundation edge, insert into the next stitch on that edge. Then I'm going to insert into the top edge on the last stitch I came out of before, and then bring the needle towards me through the next stitch on that same edge and pull the yarn through. So I'm going to keep doing this, inserting through the foundation edge, through the stitch on the top edge that I just came out of, and then back through the next one pointing towards me, and just keep stitching that way, pulling the yarn tight as I go until I get all the way down to this edge over here. So I've just got one stitch left here, and I'm just going to take one more little bitty stitch on that edge and make a knot to tie it off. Now I'm going to use the rest of this yarn to go ahead and cinch the top of the hat closed. So to do that, I'm just going to take just like one or maybe two strands from the edges of the rows every ½ inch or so, and just pull that yarn through them. And as we go around, we will start pulling on that yarn to start closing up the hole. And you're going to end up with a smaller hole to close up if you are only picking up one strand at a time. So I'm just going around and picking up one strand of yarn off this edge every ½ inch or so all the way around. So there we are back at the beginning where we started. And I'm just going to pull on that yarn as tight as I possibly can. And then I'm going to bring my hand up underneath to try to pull it a little tighter and grab a couple strands on the tip of my needle and pull on it really tight, wrap the yarn around and make a knot, and then pull it through to close that up. So this hole is not totally closed, but if you were spreading out your places where you pick up a strand, if you picked up a strand maybe every 3/4 of an inch, then that would also make it close more as well, close tighter. So now I'm just going to go around a second time, picking up just a few of the strands that are cinched. So I'm just taking a couple strands off the surface of that cinched hole right there, all the way around that little edge, like so. Then we can pull it at least visibly tighter. So then by pulling just a few strands, then that closes it tighter at the top. So even though there is a little bit of a hole there, this makes the hole look smaller than it is. So now I can just take a strand from that same edge and wrap the yarn around the needle to make a knot and pull it through. So now what I'm going to do is attach my pom-pom. And I have kind of a short tail for attaching the pom-pom, but that's okay. So I have already gone ahead and made my pom-pom. And again, the yarn requirements for the pom-pom are separate from the rest of the hat. And that is important because if you decide to make your pom-pom a different color, then you can and know how much you actually need for the hat itself versus the pom-pom. So we're counting those two yardages separately. But for my pom-pom, I went ahead and used what was left of my cream colored yarn because I only had a skein plus a part of a skein. It was left over from another project. And then I also used some leftover bits of some other light browns that went with it. And then I just went ahead and kind of fluffed my pom-pom and brushed it out a little bit with a wire brush. And I've seen also some people use like a cat brush to do the same thing, a clean cat brush. And it just kind of fuzzes out the pom-pom and separates the individual yarn strands. So this is my finished pom-pom, and we are going to stitch it down to the top of the hat. I'm kind of gonna want to have more than this. I did cut some of the length off of my tail. So you might want to just leave all the length that you have on your tail before you cut any off. So if you look at the pom-pom, it has kind of a strand of yarn that runs around and around the middle of it. So what we're going to do is be stitching to that strand of yarn. I actually have like 3 strands that go around the middle to hold it together. So I'm going to take my needle, stitch through that strand, and if you have little bits of yarn that come out of your pom-pom, that's okay too. But I'm going to stitch through there. Then I'm going to come down here and stitch through the top of the hat in that little center section. So now I'm going to come back up in a different place. I like to do it in at least 4 places, like north, south, east, and west, across that little hole in the center. And you don't totally pull anything super tight until you've stitched through all of your places that you're going to attach it, because you don't really want to lose your space to be able to get in there and take another stitch. So that's 2 stitches. I'm going to come back down here and another place around the hat, around the top of the hat. Then I'm going to move over a little bit and come up in another place. Again, we're coming up right next to the little hole in that cinched area. And then I'm going to come over here and grab that set of strands that holds the pom-pom together. And I'm going to do at least 1 more stitch coming down into the hat. And then coming back up close to where I started to tack it 1 more time. Again, stitching through the center strands that hold the pom-pom together. So now you're going to go ahead and pull it tight and bring the yarn back down through the hat. And this is why we sew the pom-pom to the hat with the same color yarn the hat is made of, because when you turn it to the inside, the seaming yarn that attaches the pom-pom is completely invisible. So now I can go ahead and pick up a strand of yarn next to where I came down, wrap the yarn around the needle, and again my tail's getting a little short. I cut it too short when I shortened the length. So we're just going to wrap the yarn around the needle and pull it through to make a knot, and then we can just weave in this tail and the tail that we started with, and we're going to just trim the tails from the pom-pom that the pom-pom is held together with, so that they are either slightly shorter or the same length as the rest of the pom-pom strands that come out from the center of the pom-pom. So now we can just turn up the brim on our hat, and we now have a super simple, very easy knit look crochet hat made from a simple rectangle. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you liked it, please give it a thumbs up. If you make this project, let me know how it turns out for you in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe, making sure you click the little bell next to the subscribe button to be notified of new videos. Thanks for watching.